Love is the spirit of this fellowship. The quest of truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. What does it mean to be a congregation, a people, a religious tradition that centers the healing, transformative, ever-challenging idea of love? The idea that the manifestation of the divine is love. The idea that without any notion of the divine, we are still called to center love for one another, for this planet, for its people, for all of life. What does that mean when we see violence overtake the democratic process in our nation's capital? Or when we see harm done to Black and brown bodies by those charged to protect and serve? When people who we elect call upon our fellow citizens to wage war? I believe that we are still called back to love, but not in some Pollyanna-ish way that means all should be swept aside and forgotten. I believe that love calls us to also center the truth, to center responsibility, and to center the need to make spaces safer for those too often on the margins in such conversations. Love calls us to end relationships when they are harmful. Love calls us to name when injustice is happening in our midst. Love calls us to listen to those who have said for generations that what is normal is not right. As we look to our past this Sunday, we also look to our present and our future. The past is never over. It echoes along with us as we make decisions, even now. Just as what we do now will echo along the threads of many lives beyond our own. I've heard recently from multiple sources the idea that if you've ever wondered how you would have acted during the beginning of the civil rights movement, look around now. This is that time for us. I would add to that, if you have ever wondered how you would have reacted during the beginning moments of our democracy or the times of war in our country to continue this experimental nation, look around now. This is such a time for us. What happened this week and over the past almost 4 years of our outgoing president's term is not about some other place or some other people beyond America. They are a part of us too. They are a part of our country, of our history too. And during this time, during each time, when it seemed like humanity was coming unraveled, when our country was coming apart, when it seemed impossible that change could come, there have been people who did the work to make it happen. There have been people who did the years of organizing led by Stacey Abrams and the thousands and thousands of others in Georgia and in countless places to make more votes count. There were those to help heal from tragedies of nature and tragedies invoked by people. Along with the marches in Selma and Washington and protests in Philadelphia and Minneapolis and Los Angeles, there were times of pain, there were losses and deep wounds. So what about love in this moment, this time after such pain? When we think about what it means to be patriotic or on the side of love, it is about how ordinary people react during the unexpected moments, when violence happens, when people are in need, and what happens after that. I'm inspired by words shared from my colleague, the Reverend Monica Dobbins, who in turn is inspired by the climate activist Greta Thunberg's quote, "Once we start to act, hope is everywhere." There were patriots in the US Capitol on Wednesday, and there are patriots all around this country each and every day. They are the Senate aides who kept safe the cases containing the electoral votes, and Maryland Representative Jamie Raskin, who appeared in person to certify the election, having just buried his only son the day before. There is New Jersey Representative Andy Kim, who helped clean up inside the rotunda with so many others, and when his action went viral, he tweeted, "We are all ordinary people in extraordinary times. What I did isn't special. It's the same thing that drives us to volunteer at a homeless shelter or donate to a food bank. The idea that if something is broken, we can work to fix it." And those not elected to any office, who help make the halls of our government function, who returned to work after such a traumatic experience. These are the small acts of love that inspire hope when it feels like we cannot be sure of much. Because it does not take a whole lot of creativity or bravery or even very large numbers to set something ablaze. But it takes steadfast commitment and countless actions to build something worth passing on to the next generation. And that is also what it means to be part of a community that centers love, one that holds up values like the discipline of truth and enrichment of the spirit and service to all. They are not values most demonstrated in the years when things are easy, the times that help you to see who you are and who your community is at its truest core, are those when we are not certain about a whole lot of things. Too often, we lift out those who are famous or infamous for all the wrong reasons. Those who start the fire, those who are wealthy, those who do one great and momentous thing. But if we thought of what it means to be famous in a different way, what might that be like? Famous by Naomi Shihab Nye. The river is famous to the fish. The loud voice is famous to the silence, which knew it would inherit the earth before anybody said so. The cat sleeping on the fence is famous to the birds watching him from the birdhouse. The tear is famous, briefly, to the cheek. The idea you carry close to your bosom is famous to your bosom. The boot is famous to the earth, more famous than the dress shoe, which is famous only to floors. The bent photograph is famous to the one who carries it, and not at all famous to the one who is pictured. I want to be famous to shuffling men who smile while crossing streets. Sticky children in grocery lines, famous as the one who smiled back. I want to be famous in the way a pulley is famous, or a buttonhole, not because it did anything spectacular, but because it never forgot what it could do. Perhaps this poem brings us a little bit closer to the importance of our lives, what it means to be famous to those we impact most, not in global ways, but in the most local ones, the ways we change our neighborhoods, our congregation, our families, our closest beloveds, makes us famous to them. Those who helped build this place are not often in the news, but they should be famous to us, because even when we do not know their names, we have them to thank for this community. Similarly, as we look to what comes next, we should look not only to those who are senators, representatives, or the president-elect. We should look to our own hands, our own hearts, and think about what it means to love this country, especially when it is hard to do so, and what it means to call more people to the work of transformation, because to be guided by love is not to strive for a return to what was. That was not what we needed even then. To be guided by love, to quest for truth, and to live a life of service means that we must continue the millions of small things that we can do to build a world that has never existed before, and to pass on such a place as this to those who will continue that legacy long after we are gone. Because once we act, hope is everywhere, and by centering love, nothing will be the same again. That is what our legacy calls us toward. May it be so.